Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman. They say never meet your heroes. That's bullshit. Lisa's been a hero of mine for years now. She's probably one of the only person that's been on my podcast 3 different times. But this time she's coming with help. She came with fire and her amazing brand new husband, amazing dude, love him. But guys, if you're struggling and you're thinking about, well, you're getting out of the military, well, am I eligible for SSDI? How do I get it? What are the secrets? What are they not telling me? Well, that's what this episode is for. And if you stay till the end, we're going to give you something to talk about how not only can you get your SSDI benefits, but we're also going to get you some information on how to get your VA benefits through a mutual friend of ours. So, guys, welcome Lisa to the show. She's amazing. Without her, I wouldn't be living the life I am today. She helped me get my benefits for me and my 12-year-old daughter. So without her, I wouldn't have what I have. So, Lisa, I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Richard. You're always really supportive of me. I appreciate that so much. And, you hit on why I do what I do, right? I want people who are in a situation where they're suffering. I want to help them. So I happen to have this expertise, so it's great. And I'm able to help people who want to file for Social Security disability. I probably should give a basic definition of Social Security disability just in case anybody, wants to know. And I'll relate that a little bit to the med board process as well, because I know you wanted to talk about that. So Social Security disability, let me back up. I'm sorry. I'm going to back up and say something about VA benefits first. So VA benefits are basically the VA trying to make you whole. In other words, you came into the military one way, you experienced all kinds of things physically, mentally, and you're different often. You're different when you get out of the military, whether it's injuries, mental health issues. And so VA compensation is the VA recognizing, hey, you're not the same as you were when you came in. And we want to compensate you for that. It doesn't change your physical situation or your mental situation, except it might help you get, more treatment. But that's what that's for. So when it comes to that, VA benefits, you have to have service-connected conditions. So that's the argument, when you're trying to get your VA benefits. Hey, I experienced these things. I have these conditions. And they're service connected, and I need to be compensated for that. Social Security is different from that. Social Security is all about inability to work or severe restriction on ability to work. So it's just a different animal. The criteria is different. There are some things that sort of overlap, but it's just a different system. And I think what a lot of veterans don't realize is that, they figure, hey, I'm over here with 100% P&T, or I'm over here with TDIU, and so it's going to be a slam dunk for me to get SSDI, particularly if you have TDIU, right? Because that's the VA saying you can't work above a certain level. They don't think you can work. So unfortunately, that's not the case. Unfortunately, you actually have to go through the SSDI process, and you need to argue your claim according to their criteria. When it comes to med board is a little bit of a unique situation. So not unlike a scenario, let's say, where you're on short-term disability. You're out on short-term disability. They're paying you your salary, so to speak, but you're not actually working, right? This is a similar situation with med board. So this isn't true of everybody going through the med board process, but it's true of a lot of people, that they're not doing their job in the military. They're basically checking in with their command, going to doctor's appointments. So they're not working. Because of that, they can file for Social Security disability while they're still in the military, while they're still getting their full military pay. And I think that's a really good idea. So what you're saying when you file for SSDI is, hey, I'm not able to engage in substantial work for a minimum of a year, right? You're not arguing that you're necessarily going to be disabled for the rest of your life, but a minimum of a year. Well, somebody could be in the med board process for a whole year, right? Or longer. Or they could get out of the military, think that maybe they're going to be able to work, but then it turns out they're not able to work. So if we start that process sooner, you can always cancel it. You can always say, hey, no, I changed my mind. I'm actually going to work. But if we start that process earlier, it means that there's less of a gap or no gap in income coming in, because it takes a while to get an SSDI claim decision, right? So I would prefer to have folks going through MedBoard who are just checking in with their command to go ahead and file for SSDI. Obviously, you want to be prepared before you do it, but really seriously consider that, because that can really help you going forward. If you get approved for SSDI, believe it or not, I have a lot of criticism of the Social Security Administration, plenty. But one of the things that they do right is to have a very fair and reasonable process for people who are on SSDI to go back to work, to kind of try it out, see how it's working out, and they don't lose their benefits right away. It's called a trial work period, then you have an extended period of eligibility. So it's really a nice sort of ramp up to losing your benefits, or you could just stay at working a very low level and keep your SSDI benefits and have your work income. So sorry if that sounds a little bit complicated, but it's just something that I think folks going through MedBoard should definitely think about. I'm always happy to chat with any veteran or military service member who is thinking about filing for SSDI, wants to know if they might be eligible. So I'm always happy to have that conversation.
Okay, so first question will be, what is your definition of resiliency? Because we've been friends, I think we're coming up on 6 years, I think.
Something like that.
And both of us, it hasn't been all sunshine, rainbows, unicorns.
No.
So what is your definition of resiliency?
I've spent time looking at how other people made it back from really difficult situations. I think it's important to do that, because you want to have somebody to look up to. Like, if this person could do it, I can do it, right? So I listened to a lot of TED Talks. I've read a lot of books about people who've had really bad things happen to them, and they have made it up and out of that. I don't mean everything's fixed, but they've been able to be resilient. So those things are things that have guided me. But I think probably first and foremost, I'm a stubborn person, so I'll just say that. It's really just putting one foot in front of the other on a daily basis, right? Even if you don't feel like it. Because little by little by little, particularly if you reach out for support, which I know that this is not always an easy thing for you guys to do. But if you reach out for support, you'd be surprised how many people will be there to give you some support, big or small. I think about what happened to you, right, with the loss of your vision, and how lost you were at that point, and rightfully so, and how many people stepped up. You asked for help, and how many people stepped up to help you. So I think that's part of resilience. I don't think we can do it totally on our own.
And when I lost my vision, you, Matthew Curran, Tom Dorney, they were constantly calling me, texting me, you okay, bro? You all right? And I felt so much support through the convened community. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but give us a quick down and dirty about who you are, where you come from. I know you're a Jersey girl, but how did you become the force that you are today? And what really inspired you to start helping veterans and first responders?
I think a little bit by accident. So I worked at the Social Security Administration. I was a claims specialist there. And while I was there, I have a lot of veteran friends. At that point, I wasn't married, but I had a lot of veteran connections in my family and so forth. I had the really nasty workload at Social Security, among the other things I did, of processing all of the denials. So after the decision was made by a state agency or by a judge, depending on what level somebody was at, I had to process those claims through the system. When it came to the first level of a claim or the first level appeal of a claim, those decisions get made by a state agency. So when that decision would be transferred back, the claim would be transferred back to Social Security, I was the only one in my office who had to deal with processing the denials and sending out those horrible gaslighting letters that people get when they get denied, right? I didn't make the letters up, they're boilerplate. And it was very distressing to me because I just thought, oh my God, how, particularly with veterans, how are these veterans going to feel when they get this letter, right? They know they're disabled. Another federal agency has told them that they're disabled, let's say 100% permanent and total. And here's Social Security letter telling them, oh yeah, we think you can work. And this person knows damn well they can't. So I was very uncomfortable with that workload. And I'm the type of person that things need to make sense to me. So of course I'm a pretty tortured person because a lot of things don't make sense in this life. But that I thought I could, let me look at these claims, right? Let me look at hundreds and thousands of these denials with veterans specifically, or with somebody that I had interviewed, could have been a civilian, that I had interviewed where it was really obvious to me that they weren't going to be able to work. And let me see what went wrong with these claims, right? So I spent a lot of time doing that, and I found patterns. I saw where the claim was breaking down. I saw what we didn't teach people that they really needed to know to be able to have a good claim. And so what we were doing is basically telling people, okay, you filed your claim, just wait on us. If we need anything else from you, we'll ask you. That's terrible advice, but that's what Social Security is still doing with people. So really, in reality, there is a whole lot, let's just keep this to veterans for the moment. There's a whole lot that a veteran can do to help themselves to have a really good claim and a much better shot at, being approved versus being denied. So I got really excited when I saw this. I'm like, wow, this is at least in part fixable, right? I can teach people what to do to minimize the chances of getting denied and maximize their chances of getting approved. So I really kind of put together a strategy for that. And then I became disabled. So I just got to the point with my job, and I really loved dealing with the public. People think I'm crazy to say that, but I sometimes it's just a wonderful challenge when the person's difficult. But I like people and I like working with people. So I just got to the point where I just could no longer do my job because of my own conditions. And I had to leave and file for SSDI myself. So now I'm on the other side of the desk. But I was armed with really terrific information at that point because of all of those denials I had looked at. So I said, you know what? I've got this strategy ready, and I'm going to use this for my own claim. I did, and I got approved on the first try. Now, I had a little bit of an advantage in that I was an older person. I was over 50. So that helped. But I also had a disadvantage in that I was a former employee of Social Security, and they give us a hard time. So I went through like a triple review. It was ridiculous. But so that's who I am. I'm a retired Social Security claim specialist, lots of veterans in my family. I very much care about people. It's a very personal thing for me when I have a veteran client that I'm working with. I really care about helping them and supporting them along the way. So I have 4 kids. I used to live in Jersey. I lived in Jersey for about 32 years. It's the longest I've ever lived anywhere, but I have lived all over the country, and I'm originally a Midwesterner. So Chicago area is where I'm originally from. So that's about me.
And you're married to an amazing man, Mr. Bob, somebody I really appreciate and I love.
Yes, he's
the
a
ice cream eating king of the world. So Bob, if you're listening, I love you, brother. Thank you for taking care of this young lady.
Oh, I'll have him watch this later. He stepped out, but my husband is a Vietnam veteran. He did 2 tours in Vietnam. Mortarman did the flamethrower in Vietnam, which is pretty cool. He's an incredibly resilient human being. He's amazing. And I feel like I married my best friend. So,
and that's something I want to talk about a little while, because not only because there's 3 different aspects to your life. Not only are you an SSDI recipient,
yep,
you're also a business owner, which
yes,
I thought never could happen because I'm getting SSDI, and we'll talk about that later. But then you're also a caregiver. So there's 3
yes,
different aspects to your life, and I want to hit on all of them. But I have, but I'm going to preface this by, guys, this is for educational purposes only. Don't come after me because I probably don't have the right answer. So this is for educational purposes only. You can always reach out to Lisa in the future. So first question is, when I called you and we were on the phone, probably a couple hours. I remember being on the phone, being almost blind, and you're like, you're probably going to get SSDI. This is what you need to do. This is what and you gave me a lot of references, but you're like, but I'm going to tell you, you're probably not going to get Medicaid or Medicare for 2 years. And a lot of people think, well, hey, wait, as soon as I hold on, I'm disabled, so how come I don't get health care? So talk about that a little bit, because I think people get confused with that.
It's really frustrating to me that this is currently the law, right? So let's just make a distinction right out of the gate between Medicaid and Medicare. So Medicare is, you typically hear about that in terms of you turn 65 years old, you need to sign up for Medicare, right? But disabled people who get SSDI qualify for Medicare. This is where it hurts to say, 29 months after their established onset date, okay? So that's a long time to wait when you're sick, and a lot of people don't have any other type of insurance. You vets, a lot of you are super lucky that you can go to the VA, right? So at least you have that. But when we're talking about civilians, it's really hard. They lost their job. They've got to go maybe to the marketplace to get health insurance. They can't afford it unless they have a spouse that's working and can help out with that. So it's really, it's a bad law, in my opinion. I think people should get Medicare as soon as they're approved. Period. The end. Just, yeah, that's what they should get. Medicaid is, you can get Medicaid through the state, or you can get Medicaid through the federal government. If you get it through the federal government, that's because you qualified for SSI, not to be confused with SSDI. SSI is a federal welfare program. So it involves a really pretty small check, right? They give you a monetary benefit. And people who are on SSI get Medicaid right away. Again, I don't think that's fair. The working people really should get it as fast as the people who either didn't work at all or didn't work enough to have, SSDI. So the Medicare, it's great if you're a younger person and you get on SSDI, you will have Medicare much earlier than you otherwise would have, because otherwise you'd have to wait until you're 65 years old. So yeah, just to make a distinction between those two. I mean, I had the very unfortunate experience multiple times of sitting in front of someone with stage 4 cancer who was terminal, And they didn't care about the check. What they cared about was the Medicare. And I had to tell them 29 months from your established onset date. And what do you think they told me? I'll be dead by then. So it was truly heartbreaking. The first time I had to tell somebody that, I was like, okay, maybe this is a mistake. I went in the back, I talked to my technical expert. This must be wrong, right? Nope, that is correct. 29 months after established onset date.
Okay, but now, like I said, without you, I wouldn't have what I have. My daughter wouldn't be getting disability. She's 12. I think we got another 6 years to go with that. But once you get Medicare, it's not free, and
No,
it's not non-taxable. So,
yeah, Social Security.
Talk about that a little bit.
Okay, so as Social Security benefits, whether it's retirement or it's SSDI, that stuff is taxable, but you only pay tax if your total taxable income picture is high enough. I want to say, don't quote me on this, please. I want to say 35,000. And then you hit that point where you're going to have to pay taxes on it. Please don't quote me because I'm not looking at the current stuff. And by the way, I want to give a little disclaimer for me too. Nothing I say should be construed as legal advice or medical advice. So I just need to give that disclaimer because I'm definitely not a lawyer and I'm definitely not a doctor or healthcare professional. I'm just a retired Social Security claims specialist. That's it. Yeah, so it's really rough to have that wait for Medicare. Most of my clients are not going to qualify for SSI benefits because there's a very low income threshold. You know, they probably have a spouse that's working, and there's a very low resource threshold. It's federal welfare. So, you know, no veteran who is 100% permanent in total is going to qualify for SSI and therefore federal Medicaid. That just isn't the case. It's going to be an SSDI claim. However, I will say that part of Social Security's job is whenever someone contacts them, they are responsible for examining and exploring any potential benefits and then advising the claimant on what the higher benefit is, what might be more advantageous. So, you know, I know people constantly think Social Security is trying to hide benefits from them or keep them from getting benefits. It's really not true. It is true that the system is kind of a mess. That's true. But it's not true that Social Security is trying to be secretive and not let you know what you might be eligible for. If that was the case, I would have quit on my first day because I wouldn't be party to that. So
now I was in the med board, I think probably 18 months. And I never heard it mentioned SSDI once. All they talked about was the VA, and I think I put a post out. I think it was in the vet tribe, and that's where we connected. And you're like, well, why aren't you getting SSDI? I was like, I never knew you can get both. Because
right.
a lot of times you don't hear about both. You just hear about the one. So have you heard that? Is that something you've heard a lot?
Oh my God, all day, every day, all day. I mean, people, there is so much bad information in veterans groups, on social media in general about Social Security benefits. It's insane how much bad information is out there. And to be perfectly honest, I don't want to pick on Social Security too much, but you know, Congress has not funded them properly for a really long time. So their solution to that was to change up their training. Instead of in-person training where, you know, lots of hands-on experience, role playing, all that kind of thing, they went to basically computers teaching new claims specialists. It's terrible. It's bad training. And they're very short-staffed as a result of not being funded via Congress. So they just decided, hey, I know what we can do. We can just get everybody to file online, right? We'll just have them file online. We won't have to barely deal with them, and off they go, and this will solve our problem. The problem is that these benefits, every claim is unique. Every claim is unique. And there are things that you really have to discuss with a claims specialist. So I'll just give you an example, okay? So back in the day when I worked there and I was interviewing someone in person, there were 2 full screens that would come up for me that I had to answer the questions. And these were questions about my observations of the claimant, right? So let's say I had a veteran come in, and that veteran had PTSD, right? And they're avoiding eye contact because they make their chair sit a certain way so that they can see all the windows and the doors. You can tell that they're on alert and anxious, right? This is something that I would annotate for the claim. Like, this is what I noticed about this claimant, right? So a whole host of things that I made observations about, and that would be part of the claim, because I'm the only person, unless they went for, exams with doctors, which I'm not a fan of, but unless they did that, I'm the only person that actually laid eyes on this claimant, right? So that stuff was really important. That doesn't exist anymore. They won't interview people in person. So we lost a lot when they decided, nope, we just want you to file online, or if you really pressure us, we'll do a phone interview with you. But you just lose all of those, all of those observations. I don't know if I answered your question. I have a TBI. My brain will just go right off the track. So
I got a TBI too.
Yeah.
That's why I write everything down so I don't forget anything. But I wanted to talk about that for a minute because I got pushed through the first time that I went for the VA. Same day that I went, I got pushed through. The same day, or not the same day, but the first time with the SSDI, went right through. But I think a lot of it has to do with the way I treated the person on the other end. Like
that's helpful.
I'd be like, "Hi, my name is Richard Kaufman. How are you doing today? Hopefully you're having a good day. Because I know you got probably the hardest job in the world." And you can hear it over the phone. You're like,
exactly.
They're not going to yell at me. They're not going to curse at me. They're not going to treat me like it's my fault. So talk about that a little bit, what the other person on the other end is feeling.
Well, I'm going to say this. I had to deal with a lot of difficult people, right? So we had people, anything from, I don't mean to imply that people who have mental illness are difficult. I don't mean to imply that. I have my own mental health struggles, so I don't mean it that way. But it just some things that were more challenging, people that just, they were upset and they were angry. It's one of the scariest, most depressing, frustrating times of someone's life to find themselves in that position. And you and I have both found ourselves there. Yep. So I get it that this is not fun at all. And it's an awful thing to have to come in and say, I'm too disabled to work. I grew up with 2 parents with an extremely strong work ethic. My whole family's that way. I have a strong work ethic. The last thing I wanted to do was to stop working, right? And the last thing I also wanted to do was identify myself as a disabled person. I didn't want to do that. And I don't think anybody really does, right? Maybe there's a few exceptions, but mostly no. You all are trained into a certain mindset when you get into the military. It is all about that, suck it up, drive on. You have any kind of issue, don't you dare go to medical. Don't let your fellow soldiers in your case down. This mission needs to be completed. We don't care how you're feeling, right? We don't care if you're suffering at all. And if you can't do the job, we're going to get rid of you. We're just going to get rid of you, and we're going to replace you with somebody else, and we don't care, right? That's a terrible place to be. I was extremely depressed after I lost my job. There was a few months there where I seriously considered unaliving myself because I was that depressed. I went from feeling useful and active and connected with other human beings to sitting alone in the house with nothing to do except to think about how scared and miserable I was, So I forgot what you asked me. Oh, what is that? What is it like for the person on the other end? Yes.
Yeah, because you know, a lot of people, they don't put themselves, you know, you have this huge caseload, you have
Yep.
everybody yelling at you, and
Yep.
you might even be dealing with some of your own shit. And
Oh yeah, that was
and
me.
yelled at, where if somebody would just say, you know what, thank you for helping me out today. I'm
No,
sure
that was always
would bring a little bit of pressure down.
Oh, for sure. Whenever I got somebody that was nice and reasonable on the other end of the phone or across the desk, it definitely made my day better, for sure. But I think I really tried to recognize when I was working there that, again, that this was a really low point for this individual. And it is frustrating to deal with Social Security. You know, I would have people come in and, you know, curse and you people and all that kind of an attitude, right? And mostly, if I just said to them, hey, I'm really sorry that you've been here 8 times trying to resolve this issue. I can see that nobody resolved it for you. I apologize for that. But I will sit here with you. I will figure out what it is that's going wrong, what's happened, and I can't promise you that I'm going to fix it for you or you're going to get the exact outcome you want, but I am going to promise you that you're going to understand, right? I'm going to explain to you the situation. But you need to stop cursing at me and yelling, because I can't do my job if you're doing that, right? But I'm here to help you. That's what I'm here for. And most of the time, you know, 98% of the time, that person would calm down, because all they needed was to be seen and heard, which is exactly what every human being needs. They need to be seen and heard and validated and feel like somebody cares about their situation, right? But yeah, kindness will get you further, you know.
All right, so, but you know, because as you're talking, and I'm sitting there thinking, you know, the person on the other end of that phone call is probably like a 911 dispatcher. Because a lot of you guys, you know, okay, 29 months, and this lady just tell you, hey, I got terminal cancer. I got less than a year. So
Terrible.
I'm sure that a lot of the stuff is going on in your head, and you go home and you're like, she ain't gonna make it.
Yeah.
And you probably had to deal with, or not just saying you, but in general, like the 911 dispatchers, is they have to deal with the PTS because there's so much unknown that never got taken care of. And that shit still sits in the back of your mind, right?
It does. I vividly remember particular claimants. I vividly remember them. I remember a woman who came in, she was bald, she was going through chemotherapy, she had stage 4 breast cancer. She brought a friend with her best friend, and they sat down in front of me. And I looked at her at one point and I said, I know that you don't feel that you're in a good situation, and it's not a good situation, but I would like to point out that your friend is here. Your friend is here to support you. And that is more than what a lot of people have. You know, one of the questions we had to ask people is there somebody that you know and trust that you could give us contact information for? It has to do with a particular form that we might send out, right? And I can't tell you how many people were like, yeah, I don't have anybody. I don't have anybody. Like, oh my God, this is not good. You know, this is terrible. But that particular lady, despite the fact that I had to tell her about the Medicare issue, when we stood up, you know, I always stood up and walked them to the door. So when we stood up together, she said, you've been really nice. Do you mind if I give you a hug? I said, absolutely not. And I just put my arms around her, you know, and that stuck with me. I'm sure she passed. It was bad. It was really bad. And my coworkers thought I was nuts, because that's not the only time I hugged a claimant. But to me, they were all people. They were all people that were suffering in one form or another, unless we're talking about people that came into, you know, retire and they had a great work history and they weren't sick and they were just happy. You know, that's fine. But the vast majority of people who are coming into a Social Security office or were coming in are people that are in a really tough spot. You know, I did survivor's claims. You know, I had a guy who sat down in front of me, older guy, and his wife, he'd been married to her for 67 years. He broke down in front of me, and then I broke down because, like, oof, it's terrible. And I said, and this was not part of my job, I said, tell me about her, right? Because it's the only thing I could think of that would possibly make him feel a little bit better in that moment, you know? So he did. He told me all about her. And I sat and I listened, and I didn't give a flying F word about what my supervisor was, you know, messaging me, hurry up to the next, you know, the next person who's waiting. That's just me. And I didn't care about getting promoted. We got automatic promotions, right? But I didn't want to be a supervisor there. I didn't want to be promoted to some other position where I had to toe the party line, so to speak. So that enabled me to be a bit more free to do those kinds of things that I just described to you. And I loved it. You know, I loved that part of the
So
job.
let's go along the timeline. So you become disabled, and you start getting help, and you start getting healthy again. But then because we've been in the same groups probably about around the same time, about 6 years.
Yep.
And then you start thinking, okay, you know, I want to become a business owner, but now you're because I just totally went through this in the last couple months. We
Yeah.
have an S corporation right now and all that stuff, but I never thought I could become a business owner if I'm on SSDI.
Yeah.
And nobody, that's something I don't think I hear anybody talking about, that it's possible to become a business owner even though you're on SSDI. So talk to us about that. Is it truth or is it fiction?
No, it's true, certainly in the beginning. So let me put it this way. First of all, being an entrepreneur, and this is exactly my situation, okay? So being an entrepreneur allows me to set my own work environment, right? I can accommodate myself. I am normally not sitting like this when I'm working. I'm in my recliner. I have back and neck issues. So I'm normally like in my recliner or propped up on a pillow, you know, in my bedroom, let's say, and that's how I work. So I can't do that out in the regular work world. Nobody's gonna let me work from a recliner, right? But those were certainly some of my issues is you know, stuff from my accident that I just couldn't sit or stand for significant amounts of time, which is what I had to do at my job and what I would have to do at practically any job. So it's a wonderful option for disabled folks, entrepreneurship. And veterans, I think many of them have that bent. You know, they've got character qualities and experiences that lend themselves to entrepreneurship. So I just wanted to say that out of the gate. Yes, so here's the deal. Once you're on SSDI and you want to explore going back to work, and I'm going to say two things. So back to work working for somebody else has a set of rules, and back to work as your own business has another set of rules. So the basic definition of SSDI is inability to engage in substantial work. It's a very low threshold. It's defined as a dollar amount. So we're talking in 2024 on this, podcast, and in 2024, and I'm gonna leave aside, just because I can't remember the figure, I'm gonna leave aside the different figure for folks who are blind, right? Deemed blind criteria by Social Security disability. Their threshold is a bit higher. I just can't remember what it is right now. But for everybody else,
is that being totally blind, or is that being?
It's if you meet the blindness criteria for Social Security. There's very specific criteria for that. And I can't quote it to you because I don't recall what it is, but you can find it. You could just Google that. What is Social Security's criteria for blindness? And they'll tell you have to have a certain level of non-vision and so forth. Oh gosh, it just went right off the track again. Oh, okay, so working after you get the benefits. So if you're working for somebody else, you can't go over $1,550 a month gross wages before they take anything out. So it's a low threshold, right? But you get something called a trial work period. There's a lower dollar amount, and I'm probably going to get this wrong because I don't have it in front of me. I want to say it's like $1,050. That is a trial work month amount. So when you're going through the trial work months, which is 39 months inside of a 36-month period, any month that you earn under that trial work amount, under that, I think it's 1,050 this year, fine, you're just going to continue, you're getting your benefits. If you earn over that amount, the trial work amount, then they start counting that as a trial work month that you have used. So one, you don't have to use them in order, they can be spread out, but once you reach those 9 months, you get a 2-month grace period, and then you go into something called your extended period of eligibility. And during that period of time, every month that you earn that substantial gainful activity amount, which again, this year is $1,550, you're not due a check. Any month where you don't make that amount of money, it's under that, you are owed a check. So one of the things that's really, really important with Social Security disability, if you start working again, is to report your wages. They'll put an ongoing estimate in the system, so if it changes, you're going to need to update them with that, and they will track for you the trial work period, the extended period of eligibility. It's a really good idea to track it yourself. There's a pamphlet that Social Security has, you can search for it right on their website, called Working While Disabled. And that spells out all the stuff. It gets updated every year in January with the new dollar amount thresholds. And that's a really good place to look, right? So that's pretty straightforward, working for somebody else. Working for yourself is not as straightforward. So you don't pay Social Security taxes on your gross. You pay Social Security taxes on your net. So they're going to look at that. What amount are you paying Social Security taxes on? And they're going to average that, right, over the 12-month period. So it's different. And they also look at how many hours a month you are working. So if you are working 80 hours a month or more, they're going to say, yeah, even if you're not technically earning that substantial gainful activity amount, we're going to treat you as if you are, because you're working more than 80 hours a month. So it's a little bit more complicated. I am always happy to have a conversation about this with any veteran who is thinking about going back to work or thinking about running their business. I'm happy to talk about that. One of the things I think veteran entrepreneurs are unaware of is that, yes, they started their business, let's say they're working under 80 hours a month, but they've just kind of started their business, right? And so they're not making, any kind of significant amount of money. They're disabled. They can't work a whole lot because they're disabled. And if they should file for SSDI, and if they get approved, then they're in that, thing where they don't lose their benefits right away, right? So for me, I started my business while I was collecting SSDI. I worked a little bit in the beginning, then a little bit more. I made a little bit more money. I don't make fantastic amounts of money because I don't charge a lot of money, but I eventually got to the point where I was going to come off of SSDI. That happened to be, I think it was a month before I turned my full retirement age. So anybody that's collecting SSDI and turns their full retirement age, they just get switched over to retirement. It's the same amount of money. They just aren't called disabled anymore. So that's kind of how that works.
Okay, now guys, like I said, this is nothing legally binding. So this is just hearsay, like they would say in court. But when because I have started my own, we started a company.
Right.
And I talked to my coach, and he's like, well, why don't you just start an S Corp where you ain't getting paid nothing? The company's going to get paid everything, and they can't touch your money because you're not making any money. And
I mean, as long as you're not working 80 hours a month, I don't see a problem with that. But if anything's attached to your Social Security number, and the way to know, Richard, is to go. Everybody should have, I'm just going to give a plug here because this is something good. Everybody, even if they haven't filed for benefits yet or anything, everybody should create a My Social Security account on the Social Security website, which is ssa.gov. And the reason for that is sometimes people are victims of identity theft. Someone else is using your social security number. You can get somewhat of an estimate of your benefits online. Personally, I think it's better to call Social Security, but you can get kind of an estimate. I just want to give a little bit of a disclaimer here. When you're working, right, you're earning work credits. At some point, you earn enough work credits to be what we call insured for retirement, right? So that's 40 credits to get, so what would that be, 4 times? I can't do math. But anyway, 40 credits, you can earn a maximum of 4 per year. So that's what happens, and that's why people get retirement benefits. Disability works a little bit differently. You're earning work credits, right? And you earn enough to become insured for disability. And as long as you're continuing working and earning work credits, you keep that insured status. However, when you stop working, and let's just use an example of somebody that was working steadily, not somebody that was in and out of work. So if you've been working steadily, you become insured for disability. As long as you became disabled inside of the period of time when you were disabled, inside the period of time when you were disabled, you can file for disability even if you have since lost your insured status, as long as your onset of your disability was inside of that period. Now, if someone's working steadily and they stop working, they typically lose their insured status for disability after 5 years, right? They lose it, they're not insured for disability anymore. Doesn't mean that they couldn't file. Again, the onset of their disability would have to be inside of that insured period, but it makes it a lot harder because you're having to argue disability in the past. So I really would rather see veterans, get the show on the road in terms of filing for SSDI and not put it off, because you don't want to lose your insured status and then have to argue disability in the past. It's possible to do, but it's just a lot harder to do.
Okay, so Lisa, let me ask you another question. A lot of us, I'm blessed. I have an amazing wife. I got an amazing bride. She's my best friend. But when I first got disabled, literally, I couldn't wipe my own ass. I was
Yep.
blind. I couldn't see. I couldn't fix my own meals. I couldn't go shopping. She had to drive me everywhere. She had to do everything for me. So, what happens to the caregiver? And because you're in that situation and have been in that situation, what's that like? And is there anything for the caregiver?
Yes. So there's things that particular qualifications that have to be in place for someone to be approved as a VA caregiver. But the VA caregiver program used to just be for like post 9/11 vets, and then they opened it up. And as soon as they opened it up, I want to say it's maybe 2 years ago, Bob and I applied. Now, I was already taking care of him, but the VA caregiver program comes with a monthly stipend, which is really nice because I did scale back a little bit with my work. And it comes with support. So there's, they have events, they have groups, they have, you can call and speak to social worker. There's all kinds of supports around that. There's problems with the caregiver program, which I won't go into because people can just look that up, and there's Facebook groups dedicated to that and so forth. Bob and I have been lucky. His stuff is so obvious. I would be shocked if they ever tried to take us off of the VA caregiver program. So basically, the way to get on it, I think you have to have at least a 60 or 70% VA rating. And then you have to be an individual that cannot do the basic activities of daily living, whether it's toileting, feeding, dressing, did I say bathing? Things like that by yourself. Every single time you need assistance, which is what our situation is, right? So I will say this, it is my absolute honor to take care of my husband. It's my honor. But from his perspective, you know, he will say to me, you take really good care of me, but can you understand that I hate it that I have to be taken care of? I said, absolutely. Absolutely, I can understand that. You know, he's a proud, badass Marine. The last thing he wants is to have someone, anybody, you know, taking care of some very basic stuff. And we went through, last year was particularly difficult. He was in the ER a lot. He was in the hospital a lot. You know, Facebook has our highlight reels. We don't, you know, although he would post stuff about being in the hospital. But I mean, I don't typically share any of that stuff on Facebook, like, oh, you know, this is what we're struggling with. But it was hard. It was really hard. Now, the caregiver program also has respite care. So we could have done that. We could have gotten someone to come in, you know, the VA would pay for it and give me a break. My husband did not want to do that because he wants me taking care of him, right? So we ended up not taking advantage of that. We still could in the future, but we ended up not taking advantage of that. And I will tell you, I was exhausted and burned out, and I love him. It has nothing to do with him, but it just, running my own business, having my own disabilities, and being a serious VA caregiver for my husband, it was a lot. Thankfully, he still needs the care, but this year we're not in the hospital or the ER like a bunch. So I feel like, oh, good, I can actually step out of the house, go to the Y, try to do some things to take care of myself. And so it's been better. But those caregivers that really aren't able to get a break for whatever reason, it's hard, you know?
Okay, so last couple minutes, you know, if you guys don't know what Convene Communities is, Lisa's going to give a breakdown of what it is, and then we're going to talk about some of our mutual friends and brothers in the community. So what is Convene Communities?
Okay. Convene Communities is awesome. So when I decided to start my business, what I was doing at 62 years old, what I was doing is I was basically doing very long 2.5 hour consultations with veterans, right? Walking them through the entire SSDI process, following it up with a really extensive email. This was very exhausting and time consuming. And I also felt like probably too much information all at once for the veteran to take in, you know, just because it's a lot of information. So I started looking for a platform to create a course. But what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to create a course, say to a veteran who reached out to me, hey, pay me this much money, go over here, take my course, bye, see ya, right? I'm used to having hands-on with, you know, whoever it is I'm helping, and I really care. And I know that questions come up, right? Inevitably, questions are going to come up. So I looked around, I didn't see any other platform that was going to allow me to continue personally interacting with the veterans who were going to take my course until I met Matt Curran. And Matt Curran's story is, first of all, just really compelling as to why he started Convene Communities. It's a shared learning platform. It has an incredible number of features. I'm going to mention a couple of them. It has document storage, which was great because I have a workbook, right? So my people can not only learn by watching the short videos of me talking, they can also download the workbook and some other documents and so forth. But the key with Convene is that I have a discussion board inside of my course group. And this is where my clients, veterans, hop on anytime they want, as many times as they want. There's no stupid questions. If they want to vent, if they want to talk shit about Social Security, they can do that. You know, just be respectful to me and the other veterans in the group. And they can do that anonymously. So I'm very mindful of the fact that I have MST survivors. I've got people with, you know, bad PTSD. I've got folks who have security clearances still, or just, you know, a lot of veterans just like their privacy, right? So this is a way for them to get support as they go through the process. So it's a course, but it's also coaching, kind of a combination of the two. The platform itself is fantastic because I have the IT people on speed dial. I don't often have a problem, but if I do, boom, I've got somebody I can reach out to. Now, unlike Facebook, right? You have a problem on Facebook, there's no person you can talk to. And it really has built-in marketing. You know, Matt has a podcast. He's had me on the podcast any number of times where I've talked about what I do with my course. There's a lot of other veterans on the platform, and we're very much about supporting each other's entrepreneurship journey. So it's really a fantastic place to be. Not everybody has a course. You know, some people use it differently. But I personally, that's how I use it, is with my course. And I launched that Veterans Day 2020. We're in 2024. My discussion board is huge. It's like a very large FAQ now, which is wonderful. And I actually stopped probably about a year ago doing one-on-one consultations because it just made so much more sense for me to do what I do on the Convene platform. Tom Dorney is on there as well. He's one of the people on there. And I will say this about Tom. Tom is the connection master. He knows everybody, like you, right? He knows everybody, and he knows about a lot of resources. So shout out to Tom Dorney. He cares very much about his fellow veterans. And I know we mentioned Jerome as well. Jerome, I met him. I knew that he was doing what he does with medical records, kind of translating what doctors are saying. You know, he's a retired Army nurse. So he's very good at understanding medical records. And I saw that he was doing that with VA claims, and I thought, aha, I have some clients. Most of my clients maybe don't need this, but there are some who will, who don't have a good support system. If I could teach him SSDI and what Social Security is looking for in terms of the medical records, he could also be helpful to my clients as kind of an add-on value add for me. So we talked. He's a great guy. I absolutely love him. And I know you do too, because I introduced you to him and you guys hit it off. But he's just a great guy, and he's been quite helpful to a number of my clients as well.
All right, so let's work backwards. Since we just mentioned Jerome,
yeah,
his podcast is about to drop the first week of June. It's called The Med Board: Maximizing Your Military Disability Rating. And he hired me to be his personal coach with my brand new book and my brand new course. So it's about to launch. And it's amazing. He will teach you how to get your paperwork in order before you even get out of the military, because that's one of the major problems is once you get out of the military, a lot of us never even thought about, I hurt my ankle once. I'm not going to keep that sheet of paper. And he teaches you, even if you're in, how to get your paperwork, how to get all your paperwork before you get out. So it's in order for your med board, right? How important is that?
It's very, very important. Very important. And I will emphasize this with Social Security disability. You know, I put it this way to my veterans. You're about to go into a battle, right? Would you go into a battle having no idea what your enemy's strategy is, what weapons they have? You have no strategy of your own, no weapons, no battle buddy. Why would you do that? like it just doesn't make any sense, right? So I'm the battle buddy. I'm going to give you a strategy. I'm going to give you the weapons, so to speak, which is, how to understand the system and how they operate the system. And that it just makes so much sense ahead of time. Don't be running off and pulling that trigger on filing the Social Security disability claim, because then you're going to be behind the 8 ball and you're going to have to catch up, and that's going to be difficult, especially with an expedited claim. So veterans with 100% permanent and total, the TDIU folks, you could just be at 100% if you're a post 9/11 veteran. You wouldn't have to be permanent and total. But there's certain claims that are going to get expedited. You don't want to be playing catch up, with that situation.
All right, so let's talk about Tommy D, Mr. Tom Dorney.
Yeah.
He is probably the most connected veteran I've ever met. He's also a vet. He also did at one time, fire on the ships. So talk to us a little bit about Tom Dorney and why people need to know Tom Dorney.
Oh my gosh, he's just such a great guy for resources. You know, anytime I put a question on Facebook, hey, I've got a veteran, they're looking for this, whatever it is, even if it's something sort of out there, Tom knows somebody. Tom knows about a resource, or Tom knows somebody who knows about a resource. And he's a great connector. And that's a really big gift to have if you're trying to help your fellow, human beings, and in his case, his fellow veterans. It's just, I think of him first. If I can't find a resource myself, I'm like, Tom will know, right? That's how he is.
Okay, and Mr. Matthew Curran just had me on his podcast, and that was amazing. If you don't know Matthew, I mean, another military vet. He's also a helicopter pilot for Roger Penske and Penske Racing, and he's also the founder of Convene Community. I know you touched on him a little bit, but tell us a little bit about why, if your life will be a whole lot better if Matthew Curran is in.
Oh my gosh. Matt is just number one. He has a giant heart for people, right? And he developed this platform out of the loss of his crew chief buddy, right? He lost a fellow Marine, friend of his, in a helicopter training accident.
Yeah.
And it spurred him on to create a platform where people can learn from other people, from other people's experiences. So, for example, my people are learning from my experience with Social Security disability, because that accident didn't have to happen. It was basically something very much like it had happened earlier, I don't know, a few months earlier, with another crew. And they kept that to themselves, right? They recovered, they didn't crash, but they kept that information to themselves. If they had shared their experience and that information, it would have been a very easy fix in the helicopter that went down with his friend, and his friend would not have died. Several people died, but I'm talking about him in particular. So Matt is all about sharing experiences with each other so that we can learn, so that we can maybe not make the same mistakes, and everybody has something to share. Everybody has a life experience that's valuable, that they could share something. He's become a good friend. He's also a counselor. He's a trained counselor. So he really gets it about PTSD, moral injury. And he's just he's a combination of a really badass Marine and a super kind guy. I love Matt.
So what's coming up for Lisa, and how do we get in touch with you if we have any questions?
Okay, so you can look me up. You can look me up on Facebook. I have with my last name. Last name is spelled Hiering, in case anybody wants to know. I do have a website. It just got redone by the wonderful Shauna Barnes, who is a disabled veteran herself. It is now disability accessible, my website. Shame on me that I did not do this earlier. But she's an expert with that. So she went through my entire website, essentially did a rebuild for me, and made it disability accessible. And I adore her for that. She's just wonderful. So probably my website, which is SSDI Secrets.com. And you can get a lot of good free information off of my website. It will also clue you in as to how to set up a phone call with me if you need to do that. I'm in the middle of an app being developed. So I have a wonderful guy who is developing an app for me. It's actually in the App Store waiting for approval. And that will kind of just make my workflow a lot easier. There'll be a widget on the website as soon as that gets approved, and it will kind of take people through the process of how to work with me. So I'm really excited about that. That should be happening within the next month.
Okay, and guys, I just want to put this out there. If you don't know, one of my friends, Officer Mike Fales, took his life last week, and he was co-host of the Suffering podcast. So this this episode is being brought to you in honor of Mike. So I just wanted to let you guys know that if you're struggling, you can dial 988. You can reach out to me. You can reach out to Lisa. Reach out to somebody and don't become a statistic. So I just wanted to put that out there. So Lisa, I just want to say, I'm so grateful for you. And anytime I'll plug the hell out of you anytime. Anytime I see any questions come over, I'm like,
I know. Thank you.
She's the bomb. So I just want to say thank you. And, because of you, your advice, my wife and my daughter, we're living a better life. So I just want to say thank you for what you did for us.
Thank you. That's my goal. That's my goal, to try to help people to have a better life. These benefits can be life-changing. So I really want people to get what they deserve and what they need.
I love it. So guys, make sure you check out Lisa. Also, we were talking about the book. Lisa got the book. It's in her hand.
I did.
The new book is available. And if you want to start a podcast, you can get the book by breakfast, have a podcast started by dinner. And if you do buy the book, I'll have you come on the show like I did, Lisa, and you're going to get over $997 in bonuses just by buying a $30 book and starting a podcast. You can't lose. Ask Jerome how his podcast is. He's going to start monetizing before his first episode even goes out.
I love it.
So, and I just
you're the podcast king, Richard.
Nah, I'm just a guy that knows the guys. So, guys, remember, I'm a big Joel Osteen guy, and something that he says, we have a choice today. We can either be the victim or we can be the victor. It's our choice. And if you're watching this show, you guys already made the choice that you guys are the winners. So thank you guys for joining us. And remember, vertical momentum. The only way to go is up. I love you guys. Lisa, when you see the hubby, give him a hug and kiss for me, and tell him have some of that strawberry for me.
Yeah.
Have a great week.
Thank you.